It is 7:01. We're going to call to order our Board of Commissioners meeting for South County Fire's April 5th, 2022 meeting. We're going to have those at headquarters please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Move on to approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve? Commissioner Daniels, do we have a second? Commissioner Lawrence, any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Kenny?
Yes, so we need to add on committee assignments to take up, Chair Urban, your attempt to strip me of my committee assignments.
Okay, so we'll do a committee discussion for item 9B under unfinished business.
That sounds good.
I'd like to reorder moving item 10 and replacing, or sorry, swapping items 9 and 10 in order to accommodate our presenters and get them in and out of the meeting. And then we'll be taking our executive session at about 7:45 with a return to regular session following that executive session. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to approval of the consent agenda. Got items 4A through 4F. Do you have a motion to approve? Commissioner Daniels, do you have a second on the motion? Commissioner Lawrence, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to approval of our meeting minutes for our February 15th, March 1st, March 8th, and March 15th meetings. I have a motion to approve. Commissioner Lawrence, do you have a second? Commissioner Daniels, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to public comment. Do I have anybody on the call wishing to make a public comment? Please use the raise your hand function. You'll be recognized and elevated to the meeting. Looks like we've only have a few people on the attendee side of the call. Anybody wishing to make public comments? Not seeing any hands raised. And we will move on to our fire chief report with Chief Hovis.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioner, staff, and meeting attendees. Fire Chief report tonight will again have a COVID-19 update limited to our county and our RFA. In the county, we are now up to 5,791 cases that have required hospitalization. We've had 1,120 deaths, and that's as of April 4th. We've nearly had 150,000 cases since the start of the pandemic. We have 16 members of our community hospitalized right now, but fortunately none of those are on ventilators to breathe in county hospitals. Lori Robertson will now be screen sharing our 2-week rolling period graphic. Data slowing down a little bit. This graphic is available through nearly the end of March, but we're at 60 cases per 100,000. Remember, this is a 2-week rolling time frame. So at our next meeting, we should have an update from the health district. Thanks, Lori. And zeroing in on South County Fire, we have no employees off work due to COVID quarantine precautions. Our total incidence of employees off work or quarantine since the start of the pandemic is 533. And we've had 162 employees become positive for COVID since the start of the pandemic, but only 1 positive in the last month. And we remain 93% fully vaccinated with our uniformed staff. Lori will now be screen sharing our first watch graphic, which shows the nearly 21-day time period since our last meeting through 4 p.m. today. You'll see no 3-time standard deviation threshold alerts, but we were at or hovering above our normally expected average. Lori will transition to what that looks like in this complicated pie chart with all the different types of calls that we have. What this really means is in the same time period this year as compared to last year, we were 16 0.42% busier over that 21-day period. Thanks, Lori. We are still steady at 998 confirmed COVID-19 positive patients that we have transported to local area hospitals because we have not gotten an update from Providence Everett or Swedish Edmonds since our last meeting. So Lori will now be screen sharing a graphic, and this is related to the death of local law enforcement officers in our community. Everett Police Officer Dan Rocha, pictured in the upper left hand of this slide, was killed in the line of duty March 25th. And we also lost Edmonds Police Officer Tyler Steffen, pictured on the far right, who was fatally wounded March 26th while vacationing out of state. South County Fire has offered our support to both Everett Police and Everett Fire during their difficult time, as well as Edmonds PD. Commissioners, we offered Engine 11. Let's keep that graphic up there, Lori, please. South County Fire offered Engine 11, Engine 23, Battalion 21, and MSO 21, who joined crews from Mukilteo Fire and Painfield Fire to salute a motorcade procession for Officer Rocha on the evening of March 25th as he was transported to the medical examiner. And many of South County Fire staff attended the memorial service held for Officer Rocha on Monday. There's a picture of those that attended, but what we're missing from that is 5 or more of our Honor Guard members that also joined Honor Guards from across our nation in Canada to honor this officer. And our operations team also backfilled 2 Everett fire stations with 2 fire engines and also with the battalion chief. And I want to thank those chief officers that put that together, as well as all of the personnel who supported the memorial, and so that Everett Fire on duty personnel could honor Officer Rocha. I talked with the police chief just right before this meeting from Edmonds Police. It will be a different service for Officer Steffen, limited to just family and friends, law enforcement, and police. It'll happen a little bit later this month, and information will be posted very soon on that. Thank you, Lori. It's transitioning to our next slide. Our community outreach team has been supporting efforts to assist Afghan refugees arriving in our communities. On March 26th, outreach manager Guzman and PIO Hines participated in an outreach event in Linwood, attended by more than 50 refugees from Afghan communities. And with the assistance of translators present, talked about smoke alarms and child car seats. And here's an example of one of the informational flyers that we provided in the 3 main languages spoken by those in attendance. And about a dozen of these families signed up to receive assistance with car seats as well. And we're also providing helmets to families that need it for bicycles that they've received that were donated by Snohomish County Sheriff's deputies. Thank you for staff that attended. Great event. Next slide, please. Commissioners, as you know, the RFA provided our annual report to the City of Mount Lake Terrace on March 31st. I was joined by 5 chief officers, outreach manager Guzman, and PIO Hines. We provided an overview of 2021 for Mount Lake Terrace's council, which was very well received. And just about 2.5 hours before that, our presentation to council, the RFA responded to a residential fire in a detached garage with a dwelling unit in the 22200 block of 66th Avenue. And as it's pictured on your slide, this was very well involved. The column of smoke was visible from up to 10 miles away, and the structure was engulfed fully when our first firefighters arrived to stretch a line. Fortunately, no one was injured. Support 7 and Red Cross assisted 1 resident displaced by the fire. And commissioners, want to update you that for the 2nd year, we have received no appeals for the 2022 fire benefit charge. The deadline for submission of appeals was the close of business April 1st. This allowed residents of the RFA 6 weeks from when the county mails the 2022 tax statements. We did receive a couple of calls or inquiries to PIO Hines for clarification on the fire benefit charge. And as we get to the last item on the fire chief's report, this is a video. So April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month. I remember Commissioner Metter talking about this time last year as we transition with changes of clocks. People are going out in dark clothing, walking, running, doing those things. And a lot of people can get distracted in just their driving, especially with electronic devices. South County Fire teamed up with Linwood Police and Snohomish County Target Zero to create this video highlighting high-risk areas like construction zones and school zones where drivers need to pay extra attention. We'll also be sharing coordinating social media messaging throughout the month on this topic. And with that, Lori, let's press play. And I think we're all ready with the audio up.
Studies show most Washington drivers, 91%, are distraction-free.
But with hundreds of thousands of drivers on Snohomish County roads every day, that is still thousands of distracted drivers.
Keeping our construction and road workers safe, keeping our children and pedestrians safe are important values in our community.
Here's how you can help. Put your phone away.
Don't be tempted to read a text, talk on the phone, or scroll an app.
It can all wait.
Be a responsible passenger by not distracting the driver.
Speak up when you see unsafe behavior. And keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road at all times.
Together, we can keep our community from preventable crashes.
Together, we can keep our community from preventable crashes.
Thank you, Lori. That familiar face from South County Fire was Captain Kurt Hilt from Station 18 D Shift. And with that, I did leave one item off. It was talked about a lot yesterday at Officer Roach's funeral, the family and children that he has left behind. There is a fund that's been set up if people would like to donate to that. I just want to mention that because I think it's young kids that were left behind. And I've spoke with a couple of members of our community that mentioned that they had donated and how they really enjoyed seeing such a big law enforcement and fire presence, one of whom is actually watching our meeting today. So with that, thank you. And that concludes my fire chief report, chair and commissioners. We're welcome to take any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Chief. Any questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Daniels?
Chief, I was curious about with that pie chart, we talked about the growth year over year was just under 17%. I was curious what the population growth is for that same time frame. Maybe next time, but I was just kind of curious. You know, we know the population is growing, but you know, with that growth, we would expect the call response to grow as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're less than 17% in the RFA, but it'd be interesting to look at that and see how that has changed. I know within our capital facilities plan and the work we've done with Burke and TCA, we've talked about that growth at the county level out to 2050, but it'll need to be updated. And good question. I'm tired of that pie chart. And commissioners, I know we were going to bring back some graphics today. I'm going to save it for work session because we want to get to the point where we're visualizing things in a different way. We'll be talking about that next week. And I'm excited to look at some things a little bit different way, and I think you will be too. So with that, I will keep that under wraps for now, but thank you for the question.
Commissioner Kenny?
Chief Hovis, I was wondering if you could respond to Mr. Todd Cooper's email to the board from last Friday about our facilities. And he sent an email on his last day at work, and he had some criticisms for the board and for you. And my takeaway from that email is to try and think forward as to how do we right size that department or do what's needed to be done to make sure that our facilities are where they need to be. And I was wondering if you might speak to that and talk a little bit about what can we do to right size that department.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Kenny. Like we talked about, and I mentioned you on Friday, I didn't receive that email initially. It just went to the commissioner. So I was glad to have the chance to review it. Todd Cooper had just turned in his last of his equipment, if you will, and separated from the RFA that day. I felt less that I didn't feel attacked in the email or that criticisms were directed at me. I think it was unclear on some of the questions he had as what our budget process was for last year. and some of the discussions that we had related to the 7 FTEs that I requested to be added to the 22 budget that went down to 3 FTEs. One of those 4 FTEs out of that 7 included a facilities manager position to assist us with our 14 fire stations as well as our headquarters. As you know, and commissioners, you know very well from our discussions with the capital facilities plan that date back to at least 2016, we do have some RFA facilities that are in need of some maintenance. We have grown over the years. We used to just have 1 person in facilities. That has grown to 2. But we feel fortunate, commissioners, that you did support the new facilities van. And I do think that there is a need there to bring more support into facilities. I have to have more discussions with staff as well as seeing what this would do to our financial outlook. But commissioners, I would expect that the personnel that Todd Cooper said he wasn't quite sure how much it was pushed by the chief or discussed at the budget level, that you'll see that again, I think, during the budget development process. But I want to have that discussion with staff to include our CFO, Chris Bothwell. And I think Commissioner Kenny, hopefully I answered all those questions. I know he had some concerns about a certain hot water heater and all in those different things, but other than that, I think his words sort of speak for themselves.
Yeah, I was just more interested in your thoughts kind of moving forward, i.e. how do we fix the issues as opposed to going back through them, I suppose.
I hear you.
I'm wondering, I was just checking my calendar. I see that we don't have a spring workshop scheduled this year, but in case we do, or maybe sometime in the later spring, might this be an issue that you could bring back to the board after you've had a chance to work with your staff, and we could talk about kind of what does the future look like for our facilities department to make sure we're all on the same page about, making sure the ship's moving in the right direction and adequately staffed, et cetera. Just so that it's from the board perspective, or I should just say from my perspective, it's something we don't talk about very much here at the board, but we do need to keep it in mind because it's going on every day, all the time. And we need to stay on top of it from time to time, kind of like managing insurance and making sure our insurance is appropriate. It's the same type of thing. Just got to keep on top of it from time to time. And this is one of those issues that I would just encourage you to bring back. Maybe spring workshop, if we have it, it'd be a great time. But if not, at a work session sometime later in the spring, it'd be great to revisit this after you've had a chance to talk with your senior staff.
No, I appreciate it, Commissioner Kinney. And, we do feel fortunate that the board did approve another member for the IT team. And we do, and also someone for central stores, and that, those additions. And, it's hard for some divisions that don't get what they asked for. And I asked for the budget process. There's frustrations with that. And, he's separated from our organization. And I think I'll definitely bring that back in the future for discussion globally with the budget, but appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lawrence, then Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, hey, Chief. Who on the staff manages the maintenance below Chief Isotelo?
The individuals like Todd, or the reference in the email, that has direct reported since Gary Kaufman left or was reassigned to Chief Dahl, then to me, and then to Chief Isotelo in that order.
Who was Todd directly reporting to?
Chief Isotelo. Last time he's reported to me, prior to that, Chief Dahl prior to that, and then Gary Kaufman at one time as well.
Right. Or are we is it in the works to have him report to maybe the CFO?
Yeah, there's some in the works for an org chart, look in a couple different ways. Speaking openly, definitely want to get Chris's feet underneath him. There was a member of his team that no longer works here that did that type of supervision in the past. And like Commissioner Kenny had mentioned, as teams grow and they add managers, then you need to figure out what the best fit for them is. And so that will also work into that budget process, Commissioner Lawrence, for sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, I think it is pretty general. I understand that the staff look at their own angle versus the whole broader angle. I think that's what our CFO come in to balance it, people's need and versus, you understand our budget problem outlook, right? So it is not I think then I guess you guys will have to explain to the staff the situation so that everybody can look at different angles. So, well, Chris, you're gonna have a big job to balance all this out.
Any other questions, comments for Chief? All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Move on to item number 8, our union report with President Hoover.
Good evening, Commissioners, and guests and staff. Quick report from Local 1828. I just wanted to make sure that I know Chief Hovis just showed some slides from yesterday's Everett police officer memorial. I wanted to make sure that you were aware that members from our Honor Guard team were there to help support that event. I think we had 6 of our members there doing Honor Guard duties. That is the 4th or 5th event they've participated in this year. And they have offered their support to the city of Edmonds if needed for the upcoming event. We are still working with our with the members from Local 2781 on Mill Creek and how that transition looks, and supporting that annexation into the RFA. And then tomorrow, this is a bit last minute, but tomorrow we are helping in the city of Linwood at Heritage Park. We're doing a spring cleanup there at 9 a.m. So if any of you would like to join us and help clean up Heritage Park, we'd love to see you there. I think that's all I have for tonight. Questions?
Thank you, President Hoover. Any questions, Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, I just want to support. I signed up already, but Heritage Park is Commission Matters. Has been a long time member. That place is really cool, the street cars and everything else. So I encourage anyone that, want to do sign up. Just show up, I guess. But you do have to register, right? But I think they probably will not turn down the. It's a fun work. I'm just going to say.
President Hoover, is that a Earth Day type of a cleanup? Are you guys like removing ivy, or is it just kind of a general cleanup?
I believe it to be a general cleanup.
Okay. I know there's a lot of groups that are going to planning kind of Earth Day celebration type cleanups all around, the greater community. So I encourage people to seek those out, go help pull English ivy out of parks and other fun stuff. Any other questions for President Hoover? All right, seeing none. Thank you, sir. We'll be moving on to our new business item. Currently, on our agenda, it's a 10A, but we moved it to 9A. Our National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week resolution with DC Chalfant and Snow 911 representative.
Thank you, Chair Urban. Good evening, Commissioners. Beginning on page 88 of your packet, you will find an agenda bill and an associated proposed resolution for your consideration this evening. This resolution is in support and recognition of National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. This week of special recognition will occur during next week, the week of April 10 through the 16th, and honors the important work performed daily by our dispatch professionals at Snow 911. It will be my privilege in a moment to introduce Kurt Mills, Director of Snohomish County 911. And we were also supposed to have one of his dispatch supervisors join us, but she may be having troubles logging in. So I apologize for that. I will ask Kurt to provide some additional details about this important upcoming event. So Director Mills, thank you for attending with us tonight. Do you care to provide some additional info for us?
Well, thank you, Chief, for the introduction, and hello, Commissioners. Thank you for letting me present with you tonight. And yes, we actually really appreciate the Commissioners considering a resolution supporting National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. We do this every year. It's kind of an opportunity to recognize the folks that are behind the mics, that are behind the scenes. And we've got a lot of festivities planned, and I got to tell you, the feedback and support that we get from our agencies like South County Fire mean the world to us. We're a lifeline for the community, but we're also a lifeline for our police and fire folks, and looking out for their well-being is top of the list. And when we get a pat on the back from them, it just means an awful lot. So I certainly appreciate the consideration of the resolution tonight. Thank you.
All right. Do we have anybody wishing to motion to approve the resolution? Commissioner Rowland. So is that a motion to approve South County Fire's resolution number 04052022-06, recognizing Public Safety Telecommunicators Week?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Kenny? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Chan? Is that, we're voting on the telecommunicators?
Aye.
All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Mills, for attending and the work that everyone there does. Very much appreciated.
Much appreciated.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, commissioners. Thanks, Kurt.
All right. Well, we've got about 15 minutes before we need to run to executive sessions. So we'll go ahead and start with item in your packet 9A, currently 10A, the Fireworks 22 update with Chief Fitzgerald.
Good evening, commissioners, and I will finish within your 15-minute time allotment. I promise you that. Also with me is Manager Shawnee Guzman, who can talk about community outreach, the impacts that our community outreach team have on fireworks safety in our community. And really want to talk about what happened last year, which was the first year we didn't have any structure fires, didn't have any injuries, and also is the first year of the ban on fireworks discharge within Southwest Snohomish County. And so we had not only a lot of great things happening, but also an anomalous year in the sense that lots of weird things happened last year, largely because of the pandemic. We hope that this trend continues this year. We hope that we have identified the proper strategies to provide the education in our community. That's our greatest tool. It always is. Anytime we're trying to affect a change within our community. And so Shawnee's team has done a great job of putting together the recommendations for this year, which are listed here in the agenda bill, beginning on page 84 of your packet. There are a couple small changes I want to bring to your attention that's a little bit different than as published in your packet. On page 86, the printed flyers would, instead of depicting the lawful areas of discharge, they're proposed to depict the unlawful areas of discharge. And then the draft letter, which is provided for your consideration on page 87, has some typographical errors at the bottom. Those have been corrected in a subsequent draft provided to Ms. Blankenship, and I believe distributed to the board chair as well. But I want to see if Shawnee has anything to add about how we can have a greater impact on our community the subsequent year. And then lastly, ask the commission if you have any other things that you'd like to see us do this year, since last year you had implemented some changes for our team prior to July 4th. So Shawnee.
Hello, commissioners. So we're going to do a lot of the same stuff we did last year because it was successful, but we also took the feedback we received from our residents, the complaints, and we have devised a plan to minimize those complaints moving forward by having some messaging that we will all share throughout our fire agency with our Snohomish County Fire Marshal's office. So we have kind of a standard message. One of the biggest complaints is that people kind of were running around calling all different places and nobody really took responsibility until it landed on us. And we are not the county. We're just part of the ban in Snohomish County. So we really want to put some of the onus back on the county to receive those calls at the fire marshal's office. And then hopefully with this letter of your consideration, that will help push forward some of the things that we would like to see happen. We know it won't happen for this year. We know that's a delayed response once the council maybe takes some of these into consideration, but we hope we can get there because that'll make our messaging so much easier. And again, we're going to focus on the illegal places to shoot off fireworks, because if we show them where the legal places are, we're just going to be taking our problem and driving them somewhere else. And we don't want to do that.
Thank you, Shawnee. And so commissioners, I'll ask you if you have any other input for us, for our team. We're very successful at providing a good education to our community. A lot of work goes into that. And we have some good partnerships that will help ensure that that happens again this year. But certainly our partnership with the board, the commission is hugely important. And the commission has been a great driver of how we've gotten to this point that we have with this ban within Southwest Snohomish County. So appreciate the board's commitment in the past. Hope that we're moving the right direction for you today, but certainly want to take any input or suggestions you may have for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Daniels, then Commissioner Tealflack.
Chief, I was curious, are there any other public safety entities that are pushing the same agenda?
Well, Shawnee may be better poised to answer some of that and jump in if you are, Shawnee. But certainly we know we have a partnership with Surfer, Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue, in the sense that some of their service area is included in the Southwest Snohomish County urban growth area, which is really the area designated for the fireworks ban. So we have a partnership there. We have a tenuous partnership, I'll call it a loose and not well-defined partnership with Fire District 10, Snohomish County Fire District 10, which is the unincorporated area of Bothell. And they have supported our efforts, but they don't want to publicly come out and provide any signage within their community, but generally are supportive. And Shawnee, you may know of others. Certainly County Fire Marshal is a good partner with us. I'm not sure I'm answering your question fully, but Shawnee, do you want to add? I was
curious if there was anybody else that was suggesting a ban on fireworks. That's all.
So right now, King County, this is their first year that their unincorporated areas will be banning fireworks as well. So we do have that partnership. We have the parts of Bothell and Shoreline that border us. And so that does help us, except the difference between them and us is the fireworks are banned in both locations, but for us in Snohomish County, fireworks can still be sold here, whereas they can't in King County. So they have a little bit easier time with their messaging than we do.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Chan, were you next? Or sorry, Commissioner Tealflack.
One of the complaints that I heard from my neighbors was when people in our neighborhood would shoot off fireworks, they would call the non-emergency line and say that an officer would be dispatched there, and an officer never showed up because they just got so many calls. And so that's something that needs to improve. I don't know what we can do about it, but I think that's something that a lot of people are frustrated by, where they could see people breaking the law, but nothing could be done about it.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, say Chief Fitzgerald, by July 4th, do we usually have a burn ban generally going on?
Sometimes, but not always. And it really depends on the weather and the fuel moistures throughout the region. Sure. But it's interesting because some communities throughout the state have authorize their fire marshal to make that call of an outright ban during periods of hot, dry weather, dry fuel moistures. And Snohomish County, the county fire marshal has that authority, but last year declined to implement that ban.
Yeah, well, based from my learning, what I've learned there at the commissioners' meetings, there is kind of a political problem with the county fire marshal and the fact that they're not even firemen or even come up from that career path, and they're not really interested in anything that we really do. So yeah, that's probably a non-starter there, huh? If we do have a burn ban in effect, though, do fireworks that would eliminate anybody that would make it illegal to put off fireworks in a burn ban, right?
Well, not technically, because discharging fireworks is not outdoor burning. It doesn't meet the definition of what outdoor burning is defined as in the state. So no, it would have to be a separate order based off of fire danger throughout the county.
And probably can't expect any action there anyway. So, okay, thank you. Yeah, it's probably means to be like a state law. Burn ban means any kind of ignition source anywhere. All right, thanks.
Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, I think on answering Commissioner Girafac's questions in that I think, are we going to have the same hiring the extra sheriff, paying the sheriff like last year? Because that may help, but also too, maybe Commissioner Girafac can tell your neighbor they still need to report it, even though, because not an emergency thing, but I mean, but we need a record, see how many calling from the citizens, so we can respond to that. So maybe Chief Hobart going to, are we still have that sheriff, paying the sheriff? Last year we have discussions about, should we pay, we want to pay someone earlier so that get something in the newspaper as a warning.
Yeah, Commissioner Chan, I'll turn this back over to Chief Fitzgerald. We talked about this a little bit in the packet, what we did last year with the sheriff's office. So Chief, do you want to answer?
Yeah, and to Commissioner Teoflec's point, certainly he represents a law enforcement issue that is not our jurisdiction. And so at the behest of the commission last year, we entered into an agreement with the county sheriff to provide enforcement that was largely under the guise of education, certainly, but they are an enforcement authority, whereas we are an education authority. And so that program wasn't hugely successful in the sense that they didn't write any citations. There was some conflicts in the community, and we had some complaints about the efforts that were occurring based off of when the sheriff's office would arrive at a scene. But certainly we also heard from the sheriff's office that they like to be engaged in that program. The sheriffs that were on overtime, they all enjoyed their work that they were doing, going out in the community and having a role that's different than their usual, in the sense that they were actually there to provide a service rather than their daily work of enforcing laws throughout the community. We haven't proposed that same service this year. I think there's several reasons for that. One of which was that the sheriff's office recommendation was that if they were engaged in the future, they recommended that it focus more on the 4th of July and not other weekends before then. Certainly we know that we also, in spite of their efforts, we had the largest call volume of complaints in 2021 than any other year when we've been able to measure the number of complaints. And we received great data back from the sheriff's, or from actually Snohomish County 911 to represent what happened during that time. So currently, no, we're not proposing to bring law enforcement back. It would be a good opportunity for us to evaluate the merits of our educational program in another year, to see if 2021 was a complete anomaly, or if in fact all of our education efforts are bringing value into the safety of our communities.
Well, last year is educational because of the first year, right? But now eventually, I wouldn't mind to take a look at that, and maybe this time we have to be, become enforcement. The critical part is this: all the city in the sub-county are banned, right? So we want to emphasize that. So now even non-incorporated is also banned too. I think, to my opinion, is that we got to have some kind of enforcement. So maybe 2 or 3 years, then people will learn, oh, we're serious about the ban, because we have worked really, really hard for 15 years or 10 years to go on to get this done. So.
Yeah, and at the risk of going and breaking my promise to the commission of staying within the 15-minute mark, I'll just say that our intentions certainly are just to focus on the efforts that we have, and to make our efforts on education paramount, as we always do, certainly. But I lost my train of thought here. I had a really good thought for you, and I'm stretched by the clock here.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yeah, Chief Fitzgerald, I'd encourage you to reconsider on the sheriffs. You made it clear last year that our firefighters and our fire marshals, they declined to do any enforcement. They are not necessarily able to do any enforcement in the unincorporated areas. So to me, it's a gray area there, but it's clear that the sheriff's office can do the enforcement. I think just relying on education is not going to get it done. But I think that the enforcement piece, even though it cost us $30,000, is important to send a message that there's a culture change, that things have changed in the unincorporated area of South County Fire, and people can't do certain things that they could before. And part of that is enforcement from the sheriff's office. Ideally, it's actually going to take some work, and we're actually pretty late in the process at this point, trying to talk with the prosecutor's office about making sure that they're willing to do some type of enforcement, because otherwise, like last year, they plan to throw away any infractions that they get. And the sheriff's office is not real excited about doing any enforcement if their infractions just get thrown away. So them doing education is okay, particularly in the first year, but it'd be nice to move on to some type of enforcement. But that's got to be coordinated, or all of these actors are just going to look the other way and do not, do as little as they possibly can. And so that's why I think there's a real coordination effort here to get the enforcement piece off the ground. And just relying on education is not going to get the job done, and is going to leave a lot of our neighborhoods looking like the war zone that they always do. So I think if we want to make that change, it's not just education, it's also some enforcement too. And the only way that's going to come is with the sheriff's office. And I think they did engage with us, and that was good. And I think we can do that again. Maybe the sheriff, might be a little more helpful this time around. I would not bet the bank, but again, I think it's about coordinating with the sheriff's office to try and see what can be done, as opposed to just not doing anything at all.
Yeah, certainly. And that's why we brought this back to the commission. Certainly the commission was the factor last year, why we were actually involved with the sheriff's office. And that's why we're bringing it to you again. The point I was going to make is that really our effort right now is trying to focus with county council to get them to ban the sales of fireworks. We think that's the strongest messaging here, is that if we can ban the sale of fireworks in the area where the discharge of fireworks is not allowed, that's a strong message to the community that unfortunately has been diluted by the fact that you can still buy fireworks here.
Yeah, Chief, that's true, but that's a longer term plan, and it's not going to happen by July 4th. And if you have the sheriff's office involved, you have the opportunity for more data, and perhaps the sheriff, anyways, elements related to the sheriff's office being supportive of that ban. But I think that to bet the bank that the council is going to do that when they already split the baby previously in order to not do that, I think having the sheriff's office involved and showing that we're putting some skin in the game with the money, I think it shows them we're all in. And if we're no longer all in, I guess that's a decision we need to make now, but I say we need to be all in, and an enforcement is a component of that in my personal opinion.
Well, if you can look at right behind my picture, that's a public dock in Lake Stickney. I can bet you can arrest a lot of people on 4th of July. That's a hot spot there.
All right, Chair and Commissioners, thank you for the conversation. I know we're on a timeline. I just wanted to kind of wrap this up to say some positives. The one positive thing we have is now the city of Bothell has banned the use of commercial fireworks with the exception of sparklers and snakes and the fun stuff that little kids want to do but shouldn't be doing anyway, as well as the sales of those fireworks. So that's a positive. We've got that going for us. One of the things that is truly a challenge, what's been identified in the past, is some of our tribal partners in the county have sovereign rights to be able to sell beyond consumer grade fireworks, which come into our communities, to which we have less control. To Commissioner Kenny's point and other commissioners, enforcement in our county is something we want to look at in RFA. So the letter that's been provided does have a CC to Sheriff Fortney, who's now in year 3 of his 4-year elected term, as well as Adam Cornell, county prosecutor. So I think if we can get some stakeholders into this conversation, that would be good. Commissioner Kenny and commissioners, and Commissioner Kenny, I'm thinking about your membership on the e-board of Snow Isle Fire Commissioners. If we could get an opportunity maybe to get that fire marshal and then under sheriff or sheriff at the same meeting with Snow Isle, if that's an opportunity, maybe to get some people talking, not one meeting to one meeting, and maybe even the prosecutor, that would be a great opportunity for us to talk. And we'll work on our piece directly with the sheriff in the meantime and see if they have the bandwidth to assist us like they did last year. Maybe they have some ideas, because the key, as you've mentioned before, the classification, you'll have to clarify what it is. That misdemeanor or class violation needs to have some teeth into it, as Mayor Nelson and the city council doubled down on last year within the city of Edmonds. So we'll be bringing back, we've heard good input, appreciate you all providing that input, and Melissa Blankenship, I'm sure, will get us up to the time if we're going to talk about fireworks, or the county's going to talk about that, to get us all back up there to do the things we did for 10 or 15 years with partner agencies like Surfer. So thank you for tonight, and thank you, Chief Fitzgerald and Shawnery.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, staff. Look forward to updates and moving forward. As pointed out, that date's coming up quick. So
yeah, thank you.
We're going to now jump ahead to item 13, our executive session, 13A, collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 4230-144. We're going to call that session to for an initial 30 minutes with the possibility of extending, and we will be returning to regular session following that executive session. So commissioners and anybody required to be in there, there's an additional link in your email. Close out of this meeting and join through that link.
The executive session has been extended for 15 minutes. The executive session has been extended for 15 minutes. The executive session has been extended for 15 minutes. The executive session has been extended for 15 minutes. The executive session has been extended for 10 minutes. The executive session has been extended for 2 minutes.
That out, yeah.
That's right.
Looks like, oh, there we go. Commissioner Kenny's in. All right, it's 9:35. We're returning back to regular session, coming out of our executive session, item 13A. Next on the agenda is a committee discussion, which was added onto the agenda. And all right, Commissioner Teoflock.
Yeah, thanks for putting that on the agenda for me. I appreciate it. Yeah, I wanted to have a discussion on whether we should disband committees, go back to the way that we were doing things from when I at least started the commission, January 2020, I believe that was, yeah, January 2020. The cons I feel about the committees are, the first is that the information that is shared in the committee meetings, it's very tough for it to be accurately given to the whole whole board. And so the whole board doesn't have the information to make the decisions. Also, I think that when you're on a committee, that you have more influence over staff for that specific subject matter, because the staff does take our opinions and they act on them. Even if we don't say something like, please do this, if we just give an opinion, they're going to then kind of change things. So it gives a little too much power, I think, to the people on that committee. Takes the power away from the majority of the board. And then the last thing is just, if a commissioner isn't put on a committee that they want to be on, it can hurt the relationship of the entire board. So for those three reasons, I feel like we could work better as a board with no committees, which is how we did prior to, I guess, like April or May, from my memory, of 2021.
How would you intend to address, like, digging deeper into topics, you know, into the finance, capital facilities, the current topics that we have at hand? What method would we get more robust reporting and the ability to have discussions with staff? Is that through recorded sessions, unrecorded sessions, additional like retreat workshops where, you know, instead of potentially twice a year doing a Friday from 9 to 3, we do it quarterly? What's the method? Because sometimes we do have a fairly full schedule and I don't necessarily feel like going to midnight every meeting.
Yeah, I guess we would have to use some discretion in how long we talked about things. I know that we don't have to do that, but we can always just say, like, okay, I've made my point and that's it for this subject. Instead of, you know, our executive session has lasted a really long, much longer time than probably a lot of us thought it would have taken. But I think that talking about things more often, like the capital facilities plan, we voted on our priorities, our board priorities. And I feel like those board priorities should just be on every meeting so that we talk about it every meeting. So it's top of mind, and that we can meeting by meeting get through it. I don't feel like that will slow us down or make our meetings longer. And for staff, for each committee meeting, you know, how many committees do we have now? Is it like 5?
Technically, we've got 3 with intergovernmental, cap facilities, finance, and Snow 911 is not necessarily a staff involved committee. Okay.
So yeah, that's just like 3 additional meetings that staff has to be on: chief, assistant chiefs, CFO Bothwell, and others. So it'd be more respectful to their time. And I think that we'd be able to get it accomplished during meetings. So it might be the same amount of time for a staff. It's going to be in the evenings, but it would be, I think, a better schedule for them to know that, okay, this is when we're having the meetings on Tuesdays, as opposed to it could be any day of the week, and they could have 2 evenings meetings, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the capital facilities, sometimes they meet outside of business hours, like our meeting today. So that's asking a lot for staff to have to work 2 meetings in a week in the evenings.
Commissioner Lawrence?
Chris, I would say we could do without all the committees except for intergovernmental. That really needs to be a committee. I can't see how it could have been done with Mill Creek and what's upcoming with Mountain Lake Terrace without a committee. But you know, the other ones conceivably could be. But do you make the point of the staff? So we've got some staff here. I'd like to hear what you make a point there. So okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that is extra. So time. So let's could the staff weigh in on that?
Well, Commissioner Lawrence, I guess there's standing committees and then the potential for creating ad hoc committees. So on specific topics like Mill Creek, an ad hoc committee could be formed specifically for that topic and would essentially have that schedule. And then once that committee was no longer necessary, would disappear, as opposed to ongoing committees. But
okay,
I don't know that you're going to get staff, advocating for more meetings, but
no, but yeah, I'd like to, Chris raised something up. It's like, okay, all right. So let's, you guys don't all jump in at once,
Well, there's only two of us left, and I'm senior to Chief Isotelo by rank and time in this organization.
Well,
so I will take the hit myself.
In the military, usually the junior guys go first. So
no, it's not how I operate. But well, I'll take the bullet for this subject matter, and Chief Isotelo can feel free to weigh in on this as well. But we can't walk away from Snow 911. I am on that committee. I'm on the personnel committee. I'm an alternate, but I'm on the personnel committee, so those meetings are mine, and my role as chief. We do have our annual reports to Breyer, to Edmonds, and one to Mount Lake Terrace. So normally you have Snow Isle Fire Commissioner also in the evening, and myself and staff have made a point to also attend those evening meetings as well. We do need an intergovernmental committee, whether standing or ad hoc, to work with our current contract cities and other opportunities that might be out there. Commissioner Lawrence, you mentioned Mill Creek. They have a fire board that's standing, but we could navigate that way. One thing to think about is work study sessions that cities do, or our work sessions. To Commissioner Teofleck's point, if the board chooses to go this direction, then we would need to really focus in on board priorities and work study sessions aligned with these other standing committee items. And to Commissioner Urban's point, or Chair Urban's, staff is going to argue against more meetings, but we do serve the commission, and we're interested in being efficient. So we would have to refocus if we moved a different direction with what we've done with committees.
Well, do the committees help you, or are they just another meeting that, just with these commissioners would just drop dead or something,
Well, finance is new, remains to be seen what happens with that one. I think we've made some good progress with the Intergovernmental Committee, but what I heard at the start of this conversation with Vice Chair Teofleck is that the information might be better served sometimes to a wider group if it wasn't coming to committee. And I think, Commissioner Kenny has chaired the Capital Facilities Committee, and I think that we brought to the board 4 or 5 different items to kind of get us down from what Commissioner Schrock would have called kicking the can. Right, we've been talking about this thing for now 6 years, I think, when we first commissioned this with Fire District 1 in 2016. And so, we've got to talk about these important issues. And if we're, sometimes the content that's added to the agenda, and I'm thinking about last year for staff, it brings some stuff in a work study session that we would not be bringing forward, maybe because we're going to focus on these important issues like capital facility, intergovernmental, and the board's adopted goals. So
the capital facilities, once again, be kicked on, thrown under the bus, kind of a deal.
Well, you're the other member of that, Commissioner Lawrence, and I wasn't going to say anything about that, but no.
I mean, if we didn't have the committee, the capital facilities wouldn't really ever. It'd be kicked down. The can would be kicked down the road again if we didn't have the committee to focus on it. So you kind of really need it then. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying if we don't do this, and this is as part of the board's bylaws and the board's decision on this and what you want to do with the committee. So staff's just providing the recommendation. It's a board that decides we need to focus in on work study sessions like a city council would on important issues that can make our other regular meetings more focused. I don't know what year it was, Commissioner Kenny or Commissioner Chan, when we went away from just having 2 meetings a month to the 3rd. But as I understand it, that work study session was added specifically to take a deeper dive on some of the issues when committees that Legacy District 1 had were disbanded. And okay, so I see some head nods. So that's what we'd have to do. So focus in on our intergovernmental and our capital facilities and even finance if we're not going to get there, and just go, those are our pillars. I'm going to go old school. Remember District 1, our pillars, right? These are our pillars of our foundation that's going to move us forward. Then we need to work on those in work study session. And I heard the idea talked about in workshops as well. or retreats or those sort of things. So I think if we're, if the board chooses to go that direction, we need to think about our periodic check-ins, and then also focusing in on work study sessions in that middle meeting of the month. And I promise if that goes that way, and that's the board goes, I won't bring back some things where, some check-ins on some things that we don't need all the time. And American Red Cross, nice to hear from them, but probably doesn't have to happen at a work study session when we could instead be talking about capital facilities or intergovernmental.
So Chief, when the committees were disbanded, previously, there was about a 2 or 3 year period of no committee and no committee structure, or longer?
I would really have to defer to Commissioner Kenny and Chan, because in that transition period, we also had District 1 meetings going with RFA meetings for a little time period there, but they would be much more able to answer that question than me, sir.
Is there a clear, like, how many years did committee, or were committees gone? Do either of you recall? Okay. I mean, the notion of sticking those large topics to our work sessions, and even if we spent 45 minutes on each one of those topics, yes, it makes for a fairly, lengthy work session, but I think we could probably get a lot done, especially if we're touching on those topics on that monthly basis, all commissioners weighing in. It's an interesting notion. Commissioner Kenny, or was it Commissioner Chan first and then Commissioner Kenny?
Well, if you guys are interested listening to me, but it seems to me there's a whole thing like not interested to the history about all that. Commissioner Jiffin pointed out good. The whole, at that time, we have 5 commissioners. Actually, when I first started, we have all committees, and how do we serve is basically everybody who was interested in certain committee, and they were just saying that I want to on a committee. We never had any conflict. Everybody got in the committee. Well done. What happened is one commissioner actually did take the whole commissioner to the basically a shadow board meeting. He done a lot of good work, but he directing a lot of assignment to the chief, to the staff. The staff basically could not handle all that, but he also not reporting to the board. That is really difficulty. Basically, that's why the whole thing reason is that we're going to abandon the committee. But at that time, it's only 5 commissioners. Basically, you have 2 commissioners, all you need to convincing one more commissioner, bang, you get your thing done. The thing to cure that is that have good notes. Each committee, when we have done that, we have a commissioner, we have a secretary to take notes. And so the notes is getting given to the board understanding that. And then also routinely come back to it. But now it's more difficult with 7 commissioners. I remember the whole thing I started with the capital facility plan is that I asked Commissioner Kenny to chair that, because what we have done is that every 6 months, a year even, come back and talk again, and then nobody follow up on that. And I think Commissioner Kenny did a very good job, really could have make it to the list and all of that. I still think at this time committee is still valuable, especially finance committee and intergovernmental committee. I think finance committee is suggested by Chief Hobus, because you throw a lot in the committee, you throw a lot of number, what if. But in the open meeting, that suddenly become, oh my God, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that. So I would like to maybe hybrid, committee, but also on the work session, then right now the work session become regular meeting. Work session, we don't have the formality, no chief report, no public comments, and maybe we leave comments, just people want to comment. It really jump into the discussion and only limit like 2 or 3, maximum 3, only 2 items, and really deep dive in those situations. That would be good. And I agree with Commissioner. I give it Commissioner Hovers. I think he's our 8th commissioner. In the governmental, you need to be sensitive. And you also need to unify information. Unify, that's what I was asking that. Mill Creek, but how do we treat Mill Creek? Same thing, how do you do with Mike Travis and all the thing. You need to be consistent on that. I think that's critical for those committees. Now, but if you want to be equal everybody, so every committee have, so many people you want to assign everybody in an equal number of committee, then you may want to create one more committee, HR committee, so everybody feel like they're on the two. But I think the whole thing is consistency. And who when you assign a committee member, you need to be who is really able to have the background experience on do that. On capital facility plan, Commissioner Kenny is the one who started out with the whole thing when the TCL come in to do the whole thing. He knows every single corner of the facility. I think he should be using that, using his talent for that. And he's the one that always study and in detail and everything else. So I think, I don't think maybe we should back out from this. Let us have a meeting and go through, have a meeting, maybe a Nick workshop, and who want to serve what committee. I don't think the chair should put everything on his shoulder, assigning committee member. Let the committee, whoever interests, some people, no, I don't want to any committee. Okay, that's fine. But whoever wants him in the committee is the critical thing. Wanted. If somebody don't even want to, then committee, you put them assign the committee, that's, the committee is not going to good. If somebody wants a committee, you don't put them in committee, that is really, you need to channel the people who want energy, want to do it. So that's my, from my experience with all this time, hopefully some of you, if you want to change anything, just listen to what we have done, and then you eliminate what we don't want to do. You don't just throw everything away. To me right now, our board is like, throw everything away. Everything good always is bad. I really don't want to listen to it. It is really disheartening. All right, thank you. Commissioner Kenny?
Well, I generally agree with Commissioner Teofilak. The issue for the board as a whole is how to tackle all of these many issues. What we have now are committees, and as we've described, committees have existed in various forms over time. The disadvantage to committees is that, as has been described, they can become a kind of a fiefdom in some cases, but in their best form, shall we say, they utilize the talents of the board members. And you spend a year, typically 2, on a committee, you get some in-depth knowledge of that particular thing. But it's not you're not there permanently. Then you move on to another committee. And sometimes you're on the cool, happening, important committees. We used to have 2 of those, HR and finance. And then the committees that were not as perhaps interesting. But you rotated around, everybody got a choice, and everybody was on a committee. And then the advantage to the work session that we've been with for a number of years until this year was that the whole board gets to hear it. And I thought it was interesting when we were in the middle of our 2-year RFA process with Linwood in the transition. The Linwood City Council members, because we talked about this issue, their experience at Linwood was don't do committees, because committees allow people to dominate information, and information is power. And so I think they had like a finance committee that met occasionally. They had some specific reason for why they had that, but otherwise they went with the full board, or in their case, the council meeting, so that everybody was on the same page with the information. I do think that takes a little more time, and maybe you can't have as much of an in-depth conversation when you're doing those work session types, essentially a committee of the whole, as opposed to committees. But what's happened with committees is, as I've seen happen before, it's not related to any particular individuals, but as Commissioner Teofilak describes, they tend to hoard information a little bit. The committee members really have to be forthcoming with information at the board, and it's super easy to give just a real short synopsis. Or the other thing is have the chief or one of the chiefs give the update, And that sometimes doesn't give the full flavor of what happened. And so it just I don't want to say by design, but just by happenstance, it's that it seems like the information does not, you definitely get more information if you're in the work session format. The downside is it is perhaps more time. Everybody's has a more level playing field though, in terms of information. But I also am in favor of Commissioner Teofilak's position because I wanted this issue on the agenda tonight because Chair Urban is trying to strip me of my committee assignments. And so I'm in favor of getting rid of committees if anybody thinks they're stripping me of my committee assignments. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I don't understand, Commissioner Urban, why are you trying to strip me of a committee assignment?
I appreciate your pointing out that per the bylaws that power to appoint is on the chair, but not the power to remove. So I appreciate you pointing it out, and thank you. Commissioner Lawrence?
Well, Commissioner Urban, I don't understand what that means.
No.
Are you withdrawing your attempt to remove me from the capital facilities
subject? So
committee?
we're on this.
Well,
in my hand, we need to talk about this. What Chris Teofilak, Commissioner Teofilak, talked about. We can talk about your thing. It may be a moot point if we go make a motion and vote on this thing tonight.
Well, it may be, but it's not a moot issue to me. And it's active now.
I know, but it's right. It might be a moot point. Okay. So I have a question for, what the heck was it now? Gee whiz. The one thing that's an advantage of a committee meeting is not a public meeting. Now, the work session is not recorded, but it is a public meeting. But then again, that's pretty much of a moot point because the public never attends. So it's not recorded, hardly anybody ever attends. So we could talk pretty openly at a work meeting. I'd say there's more pros than pros for Commissioner Teofilak's motion. I think I sort of heard the chief sort of maybe was for less meetings. So I think there's a nod there. Okay. So that's a big point because I am partial to the staff's kind of desires and how they get their work done. So I guess and since we kind of decided that if an intergovernmental could be an ad hoc committee, I'm for scrapping the committees because just form an ad hoc intergovernmental when we need to. So other than that, all the other committees can be scrapped. And so I'm seconding the motion. Did you make the motion, Chris?
Not yet. Just wanted to have the discussion. And I
how about if you make the motion, then we can have more discussion. I'll second your motion. No. Then we could do it.
Just one clarification. We have to have the Snow 911 committee, correct?
Technically, Snow 911 is not a committee. It's a, correct me, Chief, it's an appointment that Snow 911 affords South County Fire.
Yeah, the design of Snow 911 with SNOCOM and SNOPAC coming together, we as a large fire agency have one designated representative. That's currently Commissioner Chan, and then an alternate spot. So Commissioner Chan serves as a primary, I am an alternate, and then they have subcommittees that you can put yourself forward as a volunteer as well. And Commissioner Chan being on the finance subcommittee for that historically, and I currently serve on the personnel subcommittee.
Yeah, but then again, that 911 is like, it's not our kind of business. It's what we sent a representative. So that's
designated representative with an alternate. Yeah,
right. That's not a committee that we control. Its existence. We could simply say we don't want to send anybody from South County Fire to Snow 911, but that's not something we would do.
No, we'll send David.
Correct.
He likes it.
Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, can we hold off not making a quick decision like that. That's exactly my point in here. Let's think about it and then come back next week to do it. I really don't want to be everything rushed, and then it seems to me everyone will get things done. But let's do it, carefully thinking about it. And I tell you, we have a big problem with our relationship here, and that's why we need a retreat. We need to solve this problem here, right? And let's do it next week. Everybody go in and say what committee they want, and then they discuss, and not recording and all that stuff. Because I really, right now, we need to behave really good in front of the camera in here, and let's have but at the same time, we need to acknowledge the problem we have. Otherwise, we'll never solve the problem if we don't acknowledge it. All right, so that's what I'm suggesting. Don't make a decision today.
Commissioner Rowland.
So after I got that email regarding the bylaws, taking a look at it and taking a look at some of the old meetings that I watched, I know that Commissioner Kennedy did bring up at the time that the original appointments were made that the bylaws don't allow for standing committees. And I would concur with that. They're very explicit on what a committee is. And a standing committee has no necessarily set mission and does not dissolve as soon as its work is done. And I think the committees that we've set up, their work never ends. So I think that they definitely would qualify as standing committees, and as such, we don't have to vote to disband them. They aren't valid according to our bylaws. If we want to set up those committees, we would have to vote on which committees we need, how they get appointed, all that stuff. And if we want to do ad hoc ones, and I think that in the case of some of these small projects like rewriting bylaws, I don't think I agree with the Intergovernmental Committee being something that should be an ad hoc or a small committee, just because we've already seen the issues that have been created with the Mill Creek annexation talks, and some people feeling like they weren't in the loop on everything and wanting to be in the loop, and making sure when we're doing things that big that we're all on the same page, that we all have the same information. I mean, I think that's critical so that we have unity going into it, and that there's not issues that exist only for the fact that we weren't working together on it. So I do think that at this point, eliminating the committees just as a point of procedure, that they aren't authorized in our bylaws and are explicitly denied in our bylaws, makes it easy. That having been said, I do think that we need to figure out where we go from here with the smaller things. I like what I've heard tonight, and I do want to make sure that we are cognizant of the fact that that this issue kind of came up out of either a misunderstanding of the bylaws and the powers that be, or a use of powers that weren't necessarily authorized. And if there's an issue, I think that Chair Urban, you probably had a reason behind making those changes, and I think that figuring out, I think we should address whatever those issues were, because they seem to be serious enough to make those type of moves, and we should, we need to talk them out and make sure that we figure out how we get back on a path where that type of action wouldn't be something that you would, need to do or feel like was the right decision to go down that road. I guess long story short here is we can take another week or two if we want to Commissioner Chan's point, but as it exists in our rules, the committees aren't authorized. So the chair could just take that point of order and discussion's over, and then we can figure out where we go from here, or we can just let it sit on hold. I'll leave that up to you, whether you want to take that action or whether we should have a motion or whether we should put it off to the rest of the board.
Commissioner Lawrence?
Yeah, I'd like to put, I agree with the putting on hold then. Seems to be the consensus. And discuss it next week and People have time to think about it. And in the third week, we can vote to disband or not disband the, and then if we don't disband, then we could take up, we can duke it out with Jim on that issue. But whether let's not waste time on that. Let's put it on hold for the whole decision-making thing on committees, one way or the other, until the third week, and we can just think about it and then discuss it next week about hearing people's thoughts. But you won't hear from me anymore. I made up my mind. We're going to disband. See, in my career, I had to make these decisions, like within seconds, life and death, all the time. Okay, so making quick decisions is not. No, this is it. Chris had it right, and so we'll. That's my vote. And 2 weeks from now.
So, Commissioner Rowland, as I recall, when the committees were formed back in, I think it was 2020 or 2020, somewhere 2020, 2021, there was the notion of we can't have standing committees. And I thought the discussion was, well, if the committees have to be voted on at the beginning of each year, whether it's a committee for that year, I think was the stance that was taken by the commission at the time. So it would be good to get further clarification on the bylaws, committees, structures, what can and can't happen. As far as the meetings and committee meetings, we've all dedicated to these 3 Tuesday nights at a bare minimum, and in that, I expect that these meetings could go from 7 to 11 or midnight as an expectation. So if disbanding or not having committees means our work session goes until 11 o'clock every second Tuesday of the month, then so be it. If we have the time to really dig into each of those 3 or 4 main topics at a 45 or 60 minutes each month, I think this collective group, the stuff that you don't get in the committees is sometimes there's a great idea, a great notion, a great insight from another commissioner that might not be the subject matter or as adept at that specific topic, that reveals some new bit of information. I know the non-recorded session, of a committee gives some flexibility and freedom for staff and others to kind of share deeper insights into motivations and why this person might be doing this that we can't necessarily do in this session, whether it's recorded or not, because there's relationships to make sure we maintain and not harm in our discussions, should that information be, viewed. And sometimes that deeper insight does help, us come to a better understanding of why we aren't going to go down that road. So, I think we should, bring this back, look into the bylaws and get better clarification on, committees, ad hoc, however we need to do it. We can't vote on anything next week, but potentially put to our third meeting. Anything else on this topic before we move to committee updates? All right. Moving on to committee updates, intergovernmental. We haven't had any meetings since our last. I know we had staff presenting to Mountlake Terrace, but haven't had any committee meetings since then. It sounds like that went well, Chief, for our Mountlake Terrace presentation.
It did. I talked with City Manager Hugel today, actually, and he appreciated the time that we spent. And we're going to have some more conversations on some follow-up conversations that he has had with City Council members since. I look forward to talking about that at a future committee meeting or at a future work session, whatever that looks like. So Thank you.
Capital Facilities, Commissioner Kenny.
From the Capital Facilities Plan Committee, we did not have a March meeting. We are planning, at least at this point, to have our meeting on Monday, April 25th. So nothing else from Capital Facilities Plan.
All right, so no 911.
Well, unless, let me just ask Commissioner Lawrence, anything else? All good? All right,
no.
All good.
Commissioner Shams, no 911?
Yeah, there's no meeting, but next week with the Finance Committee, and then the week after next is the caucuses. And I think Commissioner Daniel is going to be, I'm going to talk to Daniel a little bit more about the caucuses and update him, the finance committee. I think he should be in the finance committee, and I'll give more information. Okay.
To go on to commissioner comments. Just wanted to say it was great to see everybody at the snow. Almost everybody. We were 6 out of, what was it, 36 or 40 people, plus Melissa, and so we had a good representation there. It was good to, see everybody and be in person. So thanks to everybody for making that effort. Commissioner Chan?
It's not comments, but more questions. I know that we're behind from other city council about in-person meeting. Maybe we should have a discussion on that. Should we have an in-person meeting and hybrid and whatever it is? Actually, I was at the Mill Creek Commissioner meeting today, and they were hybrid. There was some were there and some were not, but previously the whole council were there. I know that Edmonds is there. I don't know other council. So they already done 2 months already. So I think we should have a discussion on that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to have Melissa give us an update on our commission room. And I know with the loss of Mike, if there's any delays in the technology, things that were being kind of taken care of. So hopefully we can put that on for next week to learn a little bit more. Commissioner Rowland?
I just wanted to, I guess, share with everyone that I guess you guys knew that Commissioner Daniels and I were over in Spokane over the last weekend going through that new officer training. There were definitely a few handouts or a few pages of the handouts that I'd like to get scanned in and distributed back out to you guys. I know some of you have gone through it, but just, they had lists of tips on how to make your board work better. And there were some things that I think definitely could apply to some of the friction that we've seen that might help. So I'd like to pass that along. Other than that, it was very educational on a number of subjects, and yeah, so I wanted to thank the board for sending us out there and just pass that along.
Commissioner Lawrence?
Yeah, you guys drove to Spokane, or did you on a line?
I drove. I love that drive, and the springtime is just the right time. I'm getting itchy, so I drove.
And Derek did it online?
I flew.
You flew?
Yes, I took a 7 a.m. flight out of Everett and arrived in Spokane at 8. And 36 hours later, I flew back.
Wow, man, flew.
I didn't trust my little car to make it across the mountains and back.
So the price was about the same too. So unfortunately, he got to the tickets before they went up, and when I looked at him, I'm like, well, I don't really have a choice. I'm driving.
We get a carpool, for heaven's sakes. So anyway, the important question here is what did they have for lunch? Was it a pretty good lunch? What?
Some sandwiches and bags of chips.
Oh man, it was great. You should have been on what we went to when us 3 guys went to it. Oh yeah, that was good down there. It was Panera that catered it.
Yeah, we were very responsible. I think they were very responsible with taxpayer money.
They were.
All right.
Any other commissioner comments? All right. If not, we'll adjourn our meeting. It is 10:15. And see you back here next Tuesday for our work session.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Right.